So here's a question that's starting to surface in this whole thing. How far might liberals go, who are very fond of Pope Francis, to protect him? Once hailed for his progressive views on issues like homosexuality and climate change, he is now facing some very disturbing allegations made by one of his own archbishops, suggesting that he knew about the sexual abuse that was happening within the church ranks, very near the top, and then helped cover it up. Ben Shapiro is editor-in-chief of dailywire.com. Ben, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. You wrote about this. You talked about it on your podcast today. What do you see as the hypocrisy in the coverage on this story?
I mean, it's pretty astonishing. So several years ago, obviously, when the media started to delve into all of the sex abuse allegations against the Catholic Church, there was a great deal of enthusiasm, I think rightly so, in the press for investigating all of that. But now that Pope Francis is at the head of the church, and they like Pope Francis more than they like Pope Benedict in the left-wing press, suddenly they have to rush to Pope Francis's defense over these allegations. So the New York Times ran one of the worst headlines I've ever seen today, talking about how, as the allegations against Pope Francis mount, conservatives pounce. How is conservatives pouncing on sex abuse allegations?
Let's put it up on the screen. Go ahead, Ben. I just want to put it on the screen for everybody to see that. There it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing accusation that the story is not actually serious allegations levied at the head of the Catholic Church by other lead members of the Catholic Church over a cover-up of sex abuse of children. No, the real story is that conservatives might use this to go get an icon for the political left. It just demonstrates that for the left, it does make you wonder whether it's an actual priority to protect children or whether the higher priority is to protect the politics that they see as imperative.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. And I just want to point out that they sort of softened, the New York Times softened that headline between the online version and the newspaper version. The original newspaper version said, Francis takes the high road as conservative pounce, taking criticisms public. And then I want to play a bit of an interview with Cardinal Blaise Cupich, thank you, Cupich, which is also rightly getting attention for what he said in here, which could have easily just been blasted. Watch this.
The Pope has a bigger agenda. He's got to get on with other things, of talking about the environment and protecting migrants and carrying on the work of the church. We're not going to go down a rabbit hole on this.
Wow, we're not going down that rabbit hole. I mean, has he seen the stories that were published about the Pennsylvania diocese and what they did to these children?
How exactly is what Cupich just said not the headline on every major paper in the United States? The only possible rationale is that a lot of members of the press actually agree that when it comes to choosing between leftist politics in the Catholic Church and protecting children, leftist politics have to take the center stage. The reality is that can you imagine if Pope Benedict had said anything like this, 6-7 years ago when he was the head of the Catholic Church and when these allegations were in full swing against the Boston Archdiocese? Of course it would have been the end of the world. And it should be the end of the world because when people in positions of power are covering for institutional, disgusting and criminal behavior, that should be the end of the world, particularly when it's a religious institution that is tasked with presumably God's word on earth. But instead, the press, at least at the New York Times, seemed deeply concerned with protecting Pope Francis from any and all comers because they like Pope Francis. And I've rarely seen a more disgusting example of press behavior than this. It's truly an amazing, amazing thing.
It's pretty unbelievable. And when you point out, the movie Spotlight, which got so much attention, which rightfully, as you say, put a focus on what had been happening for decades in the Boston diocese. And then, the church's defense, which really was not credible, we now know, because these things they go on a lot less than they used to, but I don't know that that's really any comfort to anybody because they shouldn't be happening at all. But it was like, it was all decades ago. But now that you're learning that Cardinal Wuerl, who's still being discussed about whether or not he should be able to maintain his position in Washington, D.C., may have known about these things, and that Pope Francis may have known about these things. The same people who were so hard on the church when Spotlight came out and when those stories came to light should be absolutely leading with these stories and asking him these hard questions and pressing people like Cupich. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, if Jesus had any central teaching, one of them was that children are the most important to be protected. And in Matthew, he says, if you cause any of the little ones to stumble, you should have a large millstone hung around your neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea.
Again, it's an amazing thing, and I think it goes to the fact that when it was Pope John Paul II or when it was Benedict, then the press didn't like those guys because those guys were very conservative, particularly on social issues. But because Pope Francis is, I think, in his essence, a liberation theologist who believes a lot of left-wing things about climate change and redistribution of income and illegal immigration. They're going to protect him from accusations from the so-called conservative wing of the church, which, after all, is basically just asking the Pope to, I don't know, enforce what seems to me to be basic Catholic doctrine for the past couple of thousand years.
And one of the things that, Pope Francis said, who am I to judge when it comes to gay priests? And he was lauded for that, for sort of opening up the understanding of that. And I think one thing we have to be very, very clear on is that, to be gay is not to be a pedophile. We're talking about criminal pedophile behavior here. And I think everybody on both sides of the conservative liberal argument ought to be able to get on the same side that everybody is against criminal behavior and pedophilia, right?
When you are treating the pedophilia of children and the mistreatment of children, abuse of children as a political football in order to protect your guy, I would suggest that you're the evil one in the scenario.
Ben Shapiro, thank you very much, Ben. Good to see you tonight.
Thanks.
Great piece today.